Hello, my name is Fee. I'm a 3D artist looking to get back into practicing some more 3D skills. I'm starting off with some foundations by working through the How to Draw and How to Render books by Scott Robertson. This week I'm moving on to a new chapter, chapter 3 in How to Render. We're shifting away from sketching and shadow construction and starting with some of the first renderings. Here I'm starting off with the value scale. These are about 10% increments in values. That is starting from white and increasing the value by 10% and working my way down all the way to black, which would be 100%. Of course, before I get into any of the renderings, we have to start with the line work. So here I am just starting off with a simple cube construction using the techniques that I've learned in the How to Draw books. You can see I overshoot my lines quite often, and I'm really focusing only on trying to make a straight line and hit the 2 points that I'm aiming at. If sketching or shadow construction is difficult for you, I recommend just taking a step back and trying to keep practicing those sketches of primitives and construction before moving on to rendering. Shadow constructions for a simple volume like this cube, should be pretty straightforward, but I also have a video on that if this is something that is new to you. This is going to be a sunlight shadow construction, so those light rays don't actually diverge from the light source. In the book, if you look at figure 3.24, you'll notice that there is a triangular corner piece of this box, and it's kind of painted a different gray value, and you'll see once we get into the rendering part how that affects the shadow values. Starting off with assigning values, this cube is going to be a white box, so that would be a value of 0 according to my value scale here. And you notice I wrote 1.5 and might be wondering, a white box has a value of 0, not 1.5. The reason why we are shifting the value a little bit darker then its local value of 0 is that since the top surface there is going to be hit with the most light, which means it's going to be the lightest value, that technically will be the brightest part of our cube. It's not going to be a value of 0 because the light is coming in at an angle. So that top surface is actually going to be a little bit darker because the light isn't hitting it straight on. So if the light were coming down straight vertically onto that top surface of the cube, then we would actually have a true value or local color of white, or 0 in this case. Moving on to the halfway to black rule and the whole point of this exercise. This rule helps us determine the shadow value based off the local color of the object. And the way we get the shadow side of that object is to subtract the local value from black, and then we divide that by 2. So in this case, since our box is white with a local value of 0, we will do 10 minus 0 divided by 2, which would give us 5. So you notice that right side of the box is now a value of 5. And that's just an easy way to say halfway to black. So think of a white cube, halfway to black would be a 5. All that's left is to try to do the 1, 2, 3 read, and this was discussed earlier in the book. I might try to do a video on that later, but it basically says you always want this 1, 2, 3 read on an object so that you can really make it read like a 3D object. Because we're actually rendering this cube with values, we won't eventually have any line work or outlines on here, so having those values be a different number will help us define the shape of this object or cube. You can see here now I am trying to figure out the value of that triangular corner piece there. We're going to assign the local value of this piece a little bit darker, so a grayish value. I'm choosing a 4 here as the local value, and then using that halfway to black rule, I'm getting about a 7 or a little lighter, a 6 for the shadow side, and then halfway to black to that would be either a 5 or a 5.6. Because the cube is sitting on a white surface, which we defined, that cast shadow will also be a value of 5. Since I have that value scale there on the right, I'm able to eyedrop those values pretty easily. So to start with the rendering process here, I usually paint the local color of the entire object just to kind of get a base down. So that local color was supposed to be 1.5. I don't actually have a 1.5 on my value scale there, so I'm actually painting that one color and a two color and trying to not press all the way down to get a 1.5 opacity, and then eyedropping that again and painting that as the local value of the cube. Here I grab the 5 value for that shadow side and blocking that in. I'm not too worried about that triangular piece just yet. We'll get to assigning those values after we've blocked in the main cube volume. Since the surface is white, like I mentioned, we're blocking in that shadow on the surface top, a value of 5 as well. You can see I painted a little bit darker line right at the base of the cube. This is just to give me some separation between those two shadow sides that have the same value. Now I'm grabbing a 5 value and painting that number 2 side. So the number 1 side would be the top of the cube. The number 2 side is going to be our second darkest side, and the number 3 side is going to be the right side of that cube, which will be our shadow side, and that should be the darkest value on our cube. Here you can see I'm making that top surface a little bit darker, so 1.5. Initially I did block it out a lighter color, a 0, but now I'm going back in and trying to make that top side a little bit darker so that it reads as a 1.5 value. Since I have that value already on my brush, I'll go ahead and block out the tabletop as well to separate that from the actual canvas background to make it look like it's actually sitting on a white surface. Spending too much time on this white surface trying to make it look perfect and have the perspective correct. You'll see later on I end up changing this, and sometimes that happens when you're in the painting process. Alright, blocking out that triangular shape now and just assigning those values that I initially marked there. So I dropped that number 7 value, painted that darker shadow side, and now I'm grabbing the 4 to paint the lighter side. And that's my number 1 side. So my 1 and 3 sides are done. All that is left is that second side, which is about a 5.6 value. So I don't have a 5.6 on my value scale, so I chose that 5 to block out, and you'll see that I'll grab a darker 6 value and paint in it a little bit darker and try to blend that in with opacity. Once I blocked in that 6 value, I'm not pressing all the way down on my tablet, so it's not actually getting the full 6 value, and then I dropped that new opacity value to get the 5.6 that I assigned. Alright, so now we've turned off the line work. I've kept the notes on here just so that I remember what those values are and making sure I stick with that. So this is the actual rendering process here. Turning off the line work really shows how messy and blocked in those edges are. And a lot of what I've learned in this exercise is that rendering is all about trying to get those edges to match up and be clean. I mostly try to paint everything on one layer just to mimic traditional mediums, but there are times around these corners and edges where it might help to paint on a new layer and then erase after the fact. I think that's the huge advantage with digital, is that you're able to work in layers and erase. So I try to do that more and more often nowadays, but since I'm just starting out, I haven't done much rendering before this, so it is a little bit of a learning curve trying to work with the layers for me. You can see I'm finessing this stage a lot, trying to make it look a little bit more organic, a little bit more painterly, and I'm really having fun getting into it at this stage. I think most of the time could be spent here trying to make it look good and read correctly. You can see some of my edges get lost behind the background, so it's just a lot of pushing values back and forth to get the right look that you're going for. This, I think, naturally gives it a painterly feel by trying to push values back and forth, so not all of the values are the same on any given side, and this makes it feel like a painting in some ways. I'm also adding some other lighting conditions, such as this ambient occlusion shadow right under the connecting point of the cube. And these other lighting conditions like bounce lighting, occlusion shadows, gradients, things like that, are mostly from observation and also from my studies working in a 3D medium and having the computer render a lot of those shadows and lighting conditions for me. I never thought about it before, but knowing 3D has really helped me understand the 2D side of lighting. Like this corner, for instance, there is a slight highlight on the corner because there's a small bevel on that cube. Not every object in real life will have a razor sharp edge like it would in a 3D model, so just knowing this helps me add these smaller details into the rendering or the painting. Here I'm finessing that white surface again, trying to make it look good. and eventually couldn't get it to look the way I wanted to look, so I scrapped it completely. I should mention that I'm only using a default square brush. It is a square brush with a hard edge and pressure sensitivity for the opacity. I didn't want to get too into the weeds of brushes and textures and things like that just yet when I'm just starting out learning how to actually render and digital paint. You might notice I also set my canvas background to a grayish color. I think this is about 85% or so. This is so that I can paint lighter values like white and also go darker if I need to. It was fun getting into the zone with this one. I spent about 30 minutes on this, maybe less. You can take a look at that real-time video also if you're just looking for some background music. I'm still working at it, and this is one of my first renderings in a long time, so I do feel slow, and I also feel like there's a lot of room for improvement and things to learn, but hopefully more practice will make it better. We'll call it done for now, so thanks for sticking around, and I'll catch you guys on a flip.